Well, good afternoon, everybody. Maybe it's still morning where you are. If you're catching us live here, this is Orange Weekly presented by Crouse Health. My name is Brent Axe from syracuse.com. We like to hop on here right around noonish on Thursdays to talk some Syracuse sports, primarily talk some Syracuse football. There was some basketball news this week. We're starting to creep towards basketball season, right? So we'll start to incorporate some of that and all the news notes and information you need right here on Orange Weekly, friends. But we primarily talk football this time of the year, and it's great to have you on board again. If you do miss the show live, let me just note here at the beginning, maybe some of you are watching the YouTube clip or watching sometime in the future. Yes, we take this show, we put it on YouTube. It's archived here. If you're watching on the Syracuse Orange Football Facebook page, you can find it here anytime. We put it on our social media channel. So if you can't hop in and talk live with us here on Thursday, certainly an opportunity to catch the show anytime before kickoff on Saturday. And up next for Syracuse, Wagner. Can you feel the excitement? Yeah, it's that one game a year you're kind of like, heh. And typically this game doesn't really show up in game 5. Usually it's game 2. That was kind of a meh game, right? With Connecticut, Syracuse said no trouble with the Huskies in that one. And look, you just want to get through this one healthy. You just want to give your offense a jump start. It was interesting, friends, in talking to Garrett Schroeder this week, Syracuse quarterback, he had a little gleam in his eye about some wrinkles and some new things that we could start to see from this team against Wagner, I would imagine, as to not show NC State too much, because that's a huge game coming up in a couple of weeks. NC State's got their own huge game this week, College Game Day, is at Clemson, NC State, one of the biggest ACC games of the year, one of the biggest games in recent memory for NC State, a huge ACC showdown there. And that's it, friends. After this game, it's going to get real. Like, that schedule is really going to start to pick up for Syracuse. They'll come out of the bye week. They'll play NC State. We'll see if NC State's still undefeated at that point. I absolutely think they can beat Clemson, but that's a tough run for them. Then Syracuse gets Clemson. I mean, NC State, Clemson, back-to-back. NC State will complete a 4-game run at the JMA Wireless Dome with the bye week thrown in there. They go to Clemson October 22nd. So we're still just under a month away from the next time this football team goes on the road, right? Then you got Notre Dame coming to the Carrier Dome. I said it. I did it. It's like the swear jar. I got to throw $1 in the swear jar. I said it. Into the JMA Wireless Dome. There we go. And then Pittsburgh. And look, that's just a tougher back end of the schedule for Syracuse, no doubt about it. So take care of business here and then buckle up. But for Syracuse to have 5 wins in the books, and they will have 5 wins in the books after this one against Wagner, by the bye week, you really can't ask for anything more, especially considering how hard the back end of the schedule is going to get. Look, have the expectations risen on this team considering what they've done so far? I think that's a fair question. But the consensus everybody came to before the season, and this is before you see a down of football, you see how injuries happen, how the rest of the league looks, the whole thing. But everybody pretty much said, look, if they go to a bowl game, like, okay, rubber stamp this thing forward. Dino's no longer on the hot seat, and that seat has cooled considerably. But again, look, that back end of the schedule is tough, as we said. So let's just kind of keep that simmering on the back burner, if you will, not on the front burner. But they go 6-6 after a 5-0 start. That wouldn't be the best thing in the world, but everybody kind of agreed, like, that's a good baseline. And they're already 1 win away from that after they beat Wagner on Saturday. So, Wagner. Guys, Syracuse shouldn't be playing Wagner. I don't mind that Syracuse plays an FCS level football team. Colgate is right down the road. That's a terrific FCS level program. Okay. Syracuse has played teams in the past. Now, you don't want to challenge yourself. I was going through the last like 15 schedulers or so the other day because I have that kind of time. And, you know, the teams that they played at the FCS level, Maine, Central Connecticut State, Rhode Island. Remember in 2011, I believe it was, Syracuse played Rhode Island and only won by a touchdown. Once in a while, these teams come in and give you a game. The most famous example of that has got to be Villanova in 2014. It took a Riley Dixon trick play in double overtime for Syracuse to beat Villanova. That was Scott Schaefer's second season as head coach, and they barely squeaked by in that game. So you got to be careful when you schedule these FCS teams, right? But you don't want to put a team on the field that doesn't belong out there. And that's from the FCS level, especially because, this is a game you're going to win big anyway. Wagner has literally not won a football game this decade. They have not won a football game since 2019. Now, to be fair, they got hit hard by COVID. Did they even play in 2020? I'd have to go back and double check that. But their COVID season really hit them hard. So it's in the last couple of seasons, but they still have lost 23 games in a row that they've played. And not one of them, only one of them, let me correct myself, has even been remotely competitive against an FBS level team. And that was Connecticut. They almost beat Connecticut a couple of years ago. But as we saw this year, Connecticut is a shell of itself and is the worst program at the FCS level right now. And frankly, should probably drop down to FCS if they continue at this rate. So I don't mind playing FCS teams. Everybody does it. Everybody needs the get right game. If anything, timing is everything on this one. Considering you get this game, get everybody right, get the offense flowing again, hopefully get Sean Tucker pleased with his performance again, if you're looking at it from a Syracuse standpoint, and then get into the bye week, rest up, and come out of this as healthy as you can be. Syracuse, as Allison brings up here in the comments, and you guys are free to jump in the comments, ask some questions, and throw some comments at me here. Tell me what you're thinking about Syracuse football. What do you think about Syracuse using the transfer portal to help make up for some of those key injuries? Well, it would have to be after the season, Allison, because you can't add players during the year. So it's not, college football, unfortunately, is not structured like free agency in the NFL. In the NFL, you can go grab a free agent or two. You can go on the practice squad, call a guy up. The Buffalo Bills had to do that this week. They brought in Xavier Rhodes, former all-pro cornerback, because they've been hit hard by injuries. College football, you got what you got. You can't add players from the portal during the season. So that's going to be a trick there for the Orange, but they've lost two starters on the defensive side of the ball. Terry Lockett out for the year. Stephon Thompson out for the year. On offense, Chris Elmore and Isaiah Jones are out. Promising wide receiver. And of course, I think we've seen Sean Tucker really affected by the loss of Chris Elmore and how defenses have been targeting him. And, we've been talking about here on the show and on the postgame show. And of course, we've been writing about it on syracuse.com as well. So, yeah, Wagner, the good news is everybody goes out there, feels good about themselves. They'll probably cover. Can you believe this game? Now, the point spreads are a little tricky with these games. They don't come out till later in the week, but, people do want to bet on it because people will bet on anything. They'll bet on, two bugs running across the floor to see who wins, right? So they're going to put a point spread on this thing. 54.5. That's the biggest point spread that Syracuse has had in a football game. Now, once upon a time, I remember they were the biggest underdog ever. They were, was it 28.5 point underdogs to Louisville? I'd have to go back and look it up for sure. But in 2007, one of the very, very few highlights of the Greg Robinson era, they beat Louisville when they were at the time the biggest underdog for an FBS team ever. So now you're swinging the other way. 54.5 points. 54.5. And they'll probably cover with no problem. That's how bad Wagner is. Wagner got beat by Rutgers 66-7 earlier this year. You look at some of the scores against FBS teams in recent years, and it's ugly. It's really ugly. And Syracuse, just get out of there healthy. No more injuries, nothing crazy like that. And then go into the bye week ready to go. So, Allison, you make a great point. It's a fair question, but unfortunately, this is not the world of the National Football League where you can just put some guys out there. You kind of have what you have, right? So I mentioned Garrett Schroeder, and we're not only when we were talking to Schroeder this week during his media session on Tuesday, did he mention some new things in the offense that he thinks will fix what's going on with Sean Tucker, and that he was excited about. And when a quarterback is excited about some new things coming to an offense, they're probably going to throw the ball more, right? But we'll see what it is. And, let's not put too much on film against Wagner if you're looking at it from a Syracuse standpoint as to clue in NC State what's coming. But look, this is game 5. When you play NC State, it's going to be game 6. You're not hiding anything. Like you've got pretty much what you have on film. That's who you are. You can incorporate a little more wrinkles here and there, particularly in a new offense under Robert and I. Greg thinks they're going to start to run Tucker on the outside more. I don't understand why they didn't do that in the last game, Greg. They did try some stuff with Tucker in the Virginia game. Don't get me wrong, but that was one of the things they didn't do, which was strange when you're trying to get your running back flowing in that game. So I think you're right about that. The other thing with Schroeder is when he was at that media session, he had a like a brace on his left ankle, and he was definitely walking a little gingerly. Now he practiced, and if he was in somewhat of a question, let me rephrase that. If he was somewhat of a question mark to play this game, he wouldn't have been talking to the media, right? So I think it's just, as Dino Babers would say, some owies are starting to show, right? Like Schroeder got hit 6 times in that game, got sacked 6 times in that game, in the Virginia game. And a lot of you were wondering, as we were watching together on Twitter, and then some of you even brought it up on the postgame show afterwards, why there wasn't a lot of design runs for Schroeder in the Virginia game. Maybe we're starting to get the answer to that. Now, he had to tuck the ball and run a lot when his receivers were covered. And there's some lanes that he's not seeing. There's some open receivers that he's not seeing. I mean, Schroeder's had a terrific year, all things considered, especially when you look back at the kind of season he had last year. But he needs the bye. Sean Tucker, again, goes off the field against Virginia, just like he did against Louisville. They really worked his lower leg. They were really like massaging it. They were putting some kind of massage oil on it, like during breaks in the action when the offense was on the sideline. Like, he's not 100%. And look, it's that time of year. You're getting about halfway through. You play 2 very physical games against Purdue and Virginia after, 2 walks in the park against Louisville and Connecticut. That's football. Right? When we looked at the schedule, we said they're the only break on the schedule, and Connecticut turned out to be one. Louisville was an unanticipated break, right? But there was so much emotion, and it's that first game, and you're just like, and you kind of shoot out of a cannon, and everybody's healthy at that point. But once they started going down the road of the schedule, Purdue, physical team, Big Ten team, run the ball, hit you in the mouth, great quarterback, Aiden O'Connell, who almost led Purdue to victory in that game. The Virginia game, the offense struggled. Now, the good news is when they got into the red zone, they scored points every time. Syracuse is actually one of the best teams in the country in scoring points in the red zone. So Andre Schmidt had himself a game with 5 field goals, but no offense to Andre Schmidt, because we love our kickers. Kickers are people too. You don't want your kicker out there 5 times when you get in the red zone. So they've got to work on that. The defense made every play imaginable in that football game. The mob, if you will, right? Made every play imaginable in that game. I wrote about this on syracuse.com this week. I hope you guys can check out the column. So you have stars on this defense. Mikel Jones and Marlo Wax have been trading the ACC Linebacker Award of the Week. Caleb Ochukwu, who leads the Mob podcast and has kind of been the originator of that whole mantra that they have, has been terrific up front. Garrett Williams and Deuce Chestnut, of course, are stars at the cornerback position. But it took guys like Eric Coley. Okay, what a great story, by the way. Eric Coley, great kid. I really enjoyed talking to him this week. And I say kid, he's a 6-year guy. Like, he's a mature man now. Like, these guys have extra years of eligibility. You're seeing much more 5- and 6-year players all over the country, of course, because COVID gave them an extra year, and guys that are getting master's degrees and sticking around. And Coley's a great kid. And I'll tell you what a unique circumstance for him. If you're not familiar with this story, so Eric Coley is Vincent Reynolds' stepson. Vincent Reynolds, who was fired as the defensive line coach for Syracuse. Remember, in the offseason, Robert and I was brought in, Jason Beck was brought in, Michael Johnson was brought in to coach receivers, Bob Legashevsky was brought in to coach special teams. But at the FBS level, you can only have 10 assigned assistant coaches. So for sometimes you see these titles and you're like, wow, you're a tight ends coach. Really? That's all you do? But in college football, you're limited to 10. So Syracuse desperately needed a special teams coach. They had to reshape some things. And in order to bring in a quarterback coach, in order to, shuffle the deck appropriately for those 10 spots, there was a couple guys that were let go, and Vincent Reynolds was one of them. So, and he's now at Arkansas State, by the way. So imagine your stepdad, and they're very close, and the family was here, graduated from Fayetteville Manlius High School here in Central New York. Imagine you're on that team and you're going to go into your senior year, essentially your 6th year, and your family's in Arkansas and you're back here in Syracuse finishing things up. Now, a lot of these guys are away from home, but you go from, running into your stepdad and your family right there in your backyard every day to now they're halfway across the country. But he stuck it out, and it took Coley making that play at the end of the game. He made the game-deciding play against Virginia. Remember, Virginia's driving, and all they needed was a field goal. They're down 22-20. They've got a great quarterback in Brennan Armstrong. driving down the field at the 47-yard line. Coley breaks up a pass. So with all the stars on this defense, it still takes that last guy. He's not the last guy off the bench, but you got to go, as Dino Babers likes to say, I like how he frames this, into the underbelly of the defense, right? And the irony is it took all those guys making those plays to beat Virginia. You're going to see all those guys anyway this week because it's Wagner and the underbelly, the backups, the second string. They're going to get plenty of time. We're going to see a lot of Carlos Del Rio Wilson in this game at quarterback. We're going to see LaQuinn Allen at running back. We're going to see the deeper levels of that wide receiver position. I'm really intrigued to see guys like DeMarcus Adams and some other players that, we've gotten a flash look at. Some players on the defensive side that we've only seen by name, but haven't seen play too much this year. So that'll be the cool thing about the Wagner game is, getting a look at these guys. You don't really get a good projection of them because you're playing a really bad football team. It's essentially a glorified practice at this point. But in the Virginia game, what do they always say in football? Next man up. Well, Eric Coley, he started at safety, he's worked his way up. When I did that story, I talked to Garrett Williams and Deuce Chestnut and one other player. I can't remember off the top of my head. And they all love talking about Coley. They call him the OG, right? Because he's the 6-year guy. He's the oldest guy in the secondary group. And, Coley has seen Andre Sisco go to the National Football League. Ife Melifonwu go to the National Football League. Garrett Williams and Deuce Chestnut are next in line that have gone to the National Football League, right? He's seen a bunch of, I'm missing a name there. Sisco, Melifonwu. I know I'm missing one there. You guys fill in the name I'm missing because there's been quite a few guys that have gone to the NFL out of the secondary in recent years. He's seen them all and played with them all. And they all consider him like, a team leader. So I thought that was cool. One of those, off the beaten trail stories, but that was his moment. Comes out, makes that pass break up and seals the deal against Virginia. Allison says, what is going on with the offensive line? It seems like they're still getting penalized, missing blocks, and they're supposed to be experienced. Yeah, I don't know, Allison. I really wish I could. Thank you, Dan. You answered my question. Trill Williams. I knew I was forgetting one of those names who went on to the Miami Dolphins. There you go. Thank you, sir. He's hurt this year, unfortunately, not playing for Miami. But he was the other one that he didn't even get drafted, if I recall correctly. I think he worked his way onto the Dolphins roster as a undrafted free agent. But per Allison's question, let's hop back to that. It was interesting because Dino Babers was asked about this week, and this was not one of those typical coach responses. I think he was serious when he said that everything's under consideration because he was asked directly by my colleague Emily Leiker about, is this the best offensive line combination you have? And he said, everything's up for consideration. Then you get Garrett Schroeder saying, we've got some new wrinkles in the offense. So look, this offensive line it's deep, it's experienced. You've got 4 300-pounders out there, which sounds obvious, but Syracuse has not had the benefit of that in recent years. But there's something off with this line. Penalties, jumping off the line, the blocking for Sean Tucker has not been there. I know that Elmore's out, but he's just one guy. So this has been a real challenge. And this is an offensive line, of course, that led Tucker to 1,500 yards rushing last year. But there's just been too many, jumping off sides and just weird things going on with this line. So Mike Schmidt's got his hands full there, the offensive line coach for the Orange. And I'll be curious to see what wrinkles get incorporated this week because this is the time to do it. This is the time to experiment. This is the time to put in different guys. And they haven't been afraid to shift some guys around, right? But now they have to because there's something off with that line. And if they don't get Tucker going, now this game, almost doesn't count in the conversation because he will get going in this game. I'd be stunned if Sean Tucker doesn't have 100 yards by halftime in this game. But NC State's after that. Very physical team, great defense. Clemson's defense is one of the best in the ACC. The offense has been more of the driver for Clemson this year, weirdly enough. I mean, that's still a monster defense that Clemson has, don't get me wrong. So you only have this game to find something, get it right, and build on it in the bye week. And think about half the bye week is these guys just get away from football, as they should, right? Go home for a weekend. No meetings, no film. Coaches even take a little bit of a breath and they focus on recruiting and some other things. So, yeah, they'll have a little extra time for NC State, but not as much as you think, right? Because there's stuff that you got to take care of in the bye week. but it's getting very physical down the stretch. Syracuse is going to need that offensive line, and they have been at the heart of the problems penalty-wise. They had 18 penalties in the first game of the year, which was just absurd and something we're not going to see again this year, but they did it. Back to 3 penalties against Connecticut, but the last 2 games, 9 penalties, 12 penalties. By the way, Virginia also had 12 penalties, but, you know, that actually didn't help Syracuse's cause. It was just a mess of a football game in that sense, but great question, Allison. And at the heart of what's going on there is the offensive line. Greg says, very good points about the Wagner game, makes it worth attending or at least watching, you know. Otherwise, if you're looking for things to watch at that game, that's really what you're looking for. You know, take a look at the younger guys out there. Skylar says, can't wait to see the secondary, especially Carlos Del Rio Wilson and LaQuinn Allen, some of the backup players out there. Mike has a good question here, friends, and that is the game on TV? The game is not on TV in traditional means. So this game is on ESPN Plus via the ACC Network Extra, okay? So we got a couple of days here. If you don't have ESPN Plus, sign up for ESPN Plus. Don't quote me on this. They used to do this. I believe there's a 7-day free trial. Most of these apps give you a free trial, so you'll fall in that window. Some of you may have ESPN Plus and you don't know it. There is a bundle, Disney Plus, Hulu Live, and ESPN Plus. If you have that bundle, you have ESPN Plus. ESPN Plus is very easy to sign up for. I've used it to watch games. I've used it for other stuff. I use it as part of my job. So if you haven't done so already, check that you have it. It's very easy to find. Just look up ESPN Plus and sign up for it. So when Saturday at 5 o'clock comes, you're not scrambling to find the game. But you're not going to find this game if you just turn on traditional cable television. If you just turn on, like I have YouTube TV, right? You turn on YouTube TV, you're going through all the channels. It's not there. Now, thanks to smart TVs in the world we live in today, you can watch it on your TV, right? You can pull up ESPN Plus as an app and watch it on your TV, but it's not on TV, if that makes any sense, right? I know this is confusing. We'll have a post, if it should be up today, as a matter of fact, but if it's not, it'll be up soon on syracuse.com on how to watch the game. We do that every week, what channel is the game on, and, you know, it's a common question for people, but this week it's going to be a little more confusing. So, Mike, that is a great question. Tell your friends, tell people that you know, especially maybe some people that aren't really technologically sound. I'm going to have to really explain this to my mom if she wants to watch the game. She's just not, you know, into the modern technology. But, you know, look, I'm 44 years old, and some of this technology just, you know, it's great sometimes. It's confusing in others. But the answer is ESPN Plus. So sign up for ESPN Plus, and then when you pull it up, it's very easy to search. So you pull up ESPN Plus, and all the different sports are listed there. Just click on college football, search for Syracuse. It'll be right there. And the game will be there for you at 5 o'clock when it starts on Saturday. So great question, Mike. I believe this is the only game on the slate where this is going to be an issue. Every game is on like a traditional linear television channel after that. But this is a good thing to note for basketball season too, because there's going to be about 4 or 5 games for Syracuse men's basketball, Syracuse women's basketball, lacrosse, if you're into lacrosse, some other Syracuse sports that are only on ESPN Plus. That are only on the most of the time it ends up on a channel called ACC Network Extra, which is just what it sounds. There's the ACC Network, of course, but then there's ACC Network Extra, which just kind of gets all the extra games they can't put on the linear television channel, the ACC Network. So it's good to have if you're a Syracuse fan and you don't want to miss a game. And I'm not even plugging ESPN Plus in that case. It's just that's kind of the overflow channel where the stuff goes now. So sign up for it, have it ready to go. Don't be scrambling on Saturday trying to figure it out. Do that ahead of time. Make sure you guys check on that in the next couple of days before 5 o'clock comes on Saturday. So then after that, we have a post-game show on these same channels that you're watching live. About 8:30 or so, I would imagine, with a 5 o'clock kickoff, we'll be here. Doing what we're doing right now, chatting live, your comments, questions, and reaction to Syracuse's win over Wagner. Did he just predict a win? I did. I feel pretty confident that we'll be talking about a 5-0 team. If we're not, Oh boy, that's going to be the post-game show to end all post-game shows, but that is not going to happen, folks. This team is going to roll Wagner. My prediction was 66-3. And that's how bad Wagner is. They're really, really bad, and they should not be playing Syracuse, but it's on the schedule. They'll give them a win. They'll be 5-0 and only one game away from bowl eligibility before the bye week. That is big. That's big time for Syracuse. So we'll be back here Saturday night after the Orange take on Wagner. We'll wrap it all up for you. Then we'll have a little bit of time off for the bye week, and then we'll be rolling into that second half of the schedule, which is a much tougher run for the Orange. But thanks for watching Orange Weekly today. Again, if you missed the show live, it's on our YouTube channel, Syracuse Orange Sports. We'll do a post on syracuse.com where you can watch the embedded YouTube. We'll fire it out on our social media channels. If you're watching on Syracuse Orange Football Facebook page, it embeds there automatically. So if you can't come by the show live on Thursdays, it's really easy to catch a replay. Same thing with the post-game show, by the way. If you can't watch it live, it's certainly available to you on all those channels. Archived as a YouTube clip, and you guys can watch it whenever you want. So we say enjoy the rest of your week. We'll come back here Saturday night after the Orange take on Wagner. This has been Orange Weekly, presented by Crouse Health. Thanks for watching, everybody.